Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. How to use a tilt table to create perfect knife bevel grinds. Now in this video, I'm going to really show you the concept of grinding bevels using a tilt table. It's not a how-to video on building the actual tilt table. It's just how the tilt table is used. This particular tilt table was built by Jason Northgard. I actually talked him into welding up one of his tables for my grinder, which is a fairly simple process. I basically cut out all the parts and he welded it all together. But it's a really neat jig or really neat tool to add to almost any 2x72 grinder. It's basically a flat plate with a groove cut in it that allows the sanding belt to go through, and then you hold the knife blade flat on that plate in order to grind the bevels. The plate itself is attached to a tool arm. In this case, it's square tubing that slides in and out of the grinder, just like your table would. And it also, this tilt table tilts back and forth, so you can set it at the right angle, or whatever angle you desire for your bevels. What I do is I use a digital angle meter, which I calibrate or zero on the back of the platen, and then I can set the angle on my tilt table. This particular tilt table hinges. You could certainly make them fixed at a set angle. The next step in the process, or the first step in the process, is to create guidelines on the edge of the knife that you're going to bevel. Basically two called railroad tracks. That's very important. Those have to be accurate, because in edge up bevel grinding, you're really keeping an eye on those lines, and you're going to grind up to those lines, not over them. And as long as you keep that consistent, the bevel itself will end up being perfect. The other thing that you have to do with this particular setup is you have to hold the blade flat up against that tilt table. So with my thumb, I'm actually pressing down on that blade, keeping it firmly against that tilt table while I'm moving it up and guiding it into that 2x72 belt. Now I'm going to show you this grind real time. It's a fairly quick process, and it's pretty foolproof. I start with a coarse grit belt. This is a 36 grit, and the whole principle behind that is the coarser belts create less heat. You can grind away the majority of the material using the coarser belt. You won't create as much heat, and then you can go back and polish that bevel with a finer grit belt. I'm watching those scribed lines on the edge of the blade. And what's nice about this particular method is that, I'm noticing that maybe the very tip of this particular blade is a little bit away from that scribed line, so I can go straight up into that belt and grind away that particular area and even it up to that scribed line. Very quickly, you're starting to form a very, very nice bevel. I'm just keeping a real close look on that scribed line, seeing where I have to grind some more. In this case, it's up towards the tip. Right back in and ground that away. Now, I use a lot of different bevel jigs over the last couple of years. This may be my favorite. Now I'm going to do the other side. So basically, as fast as what we take 2 minutes or 3 minutes, the bevel on one side is completely done at the 36 grit. And now I'm going to go back and basically just duplicate what I did on the other side. because it's bevel up grinding, I'm going to be able to see where those plunge cuts match up really just by eye. Just another view. And you do definitely have to get a feel for this. You have to get used to holding the flat side of the handle of that blade up against that tilt table. My bevel plunge cuts here don't match up perfectly, so I'm just going to go and move a little bit of additional material from that one side to even them up. You know, as you're grinding away the bevel, you don't want to push on the blade portion of that blank so that it would tilt in towards the existing bevel on one side. You want to really hold it flat against the handle. I'm just going to bring in that plunge cut on the one side, even it up, and then I'm basically ready to switch over belts. Bevels even on both sides. One of the other neat things about this tilt table is that it's firmly attached to that bar that attaches to the grinder, so that you can slide that out in order to change belts, and it doesn't lose its angle. So I'm just switching to an 80 grit belt. What I'm going to do here is just polish the bevel a little bit with an 80, and then after that, I'll also clean up that plunge cut a little bit. Then that blade is ready for heat treating. I'll then be able to reset this tilt table to that exact same angle and polish that bevel again after heat treating. So it's really cool that the table itself doesn't lose its angle even when you pull it out to change belts. Now, in the past, if some of you may have watched some of my other videos, I used Darrell Belknap's Master Smith Pro Bevel Grinding Jig, and this is a bevel down style jig. Main benefit here is that you don't go through as many belts, and you're able to remove a lot of material very quickly. It's a great jig for grinding bevels on a quantity of blades, so that you can go through 20 or 30 blanks and grind all the bevels very quickly. The downside to this particular type of jig is that you can't visualize that plunge cut, so it's a little tricky to get those plunge cuts lined up perfectly on both sides of the blade. What's neat about Jason Northgard's tilt table jig, or tilt table grinding, is that you can use both of these jigs. I can do, if I'm going to do a quantity run, I can do all of the rough grinding and the heavy material removal on the Master Smith Pro Bevel Down jig, and then I can move over to the tilt table and clean up the plunge lines, or make the plunge lines even, and then also polish the bevels with a finer grit, as long as the tilt table and the Master Smith Pro are both set up at the same angle. And that's accomplished with that digital angle meter. You're zeroing them out on the platen of both, and then also on the actual jigs. So another look at the polishing process. This is with an 80 grit paper, and I'm just going back over that existing bevel grind. Again, I'm bevel up, so I'm watching those scribed lines on the edge of the blank. Move over onto the other side. And basically in 4 or 5 minutes per side total, you've got finished bevels. You look at that scribe line, it's perfectly uniform along the entire surface of the blade. Anyway, I would highly recommend making up some sort of a flat tilt table for your own grinder. You can make them so that they hinge and you can change the angle, or you could make it solid at a set angle of the bevel that you normally grind. Please check us out on the web at DIYEasyCrafts.com. Be sure to check out our other how-to knife making videos. If you like this video, I ask that you please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. By all means, join us on our Facebook group, Knives and Knife Making. Thank you very much.